My name is Eleanor Voss, and I'm telling you this story because sometimes the truth is the only thing that keeps you from crumbling under the weight of being forgotten. I'm standing at the back of the St. Augustine Church Fellowship Hall, the air thick with the scent of lilies and the clink of champagne flutes, watching my family celebrate as if I'm not even here. It's my niece Clara's wedding reception, a night meant to bind people with love and laughter, but there's no seat for me, not one. At 47, I'm pressed against the faded wallpaper, my simple gray dress blending into the shadows, my feet aching in heels I rarely wear. Clara, glowing in her ivory gown, hasn't spared me a glance. My sister Patricia commands the head table, her laughter sharp and bright, spinning tales of her perfect life, while I stand here invisible like a memory nobody bothers to recall. I should be used to it by now, the way they speak around me, their words gliding past me like I'm a ghost in their midst. Eleanor, always so quiet, they say as if silence is a flaw I chose. Eleanor still in that little house, no husband, no children, no story worth telling. They don't say it to my face anymore, not since I stopped trying to defend myself. But I hear it in their pauses, their pitying looks, the way they shift the conversation when I draw near. Tonight, though, the dismissal cuts deeper. Maybe it's the way Clara's new mother-in-law, Mrs. Hargrove, leaned in and said just loud enough for me to hear poor Eleanor. All these years and nothing to show for it. A dead-end life. The words land like a blow, and I feel my throat tighten, my hands clench at my sides. But I don't move, I don't speak. I let the hurt settle into the quiet places inside me, where it joins the weight of things I've carried for years. Before I go on, I want you to know why I'm sharing this. This story isn't just for me, it's for anyone who's ever felt small, anyone who's swallowed their pain, because the world didn't care to hear their truth. If you're listening, if this resonates, please hit that subscribe button. It means more than you know to have you here to share this journey with someone who might understand. This isn't easy to tell, and I need you with me to see it through. The hall is alive now, music rising as the first dance begins. Clara and her groom sway beneath a canopy of fairy lights, and I watch from my corner, my heart heavy but steady like a pulse nobody notices. I could leave, I should leave, slip out into the night, let the darkness take me. But I stay, because that's what I do. I show up even when it hurts. Patricia's voice cuts through the crowd, calling for a toast. She's standing, glass raised, her diamond earrings catching the light. To family, she proclaims, her eyes sweeping the room, but never finding me. To those who make us proud, the crowd claps, and I feel Mrs. Hargrove's gaze on me again, her lips curling into something that's not quite a smile. I meet her eyes for a moment, and I see it, the certainty that she's better than me, that I'm nothing. I look away, my fingers, brushing the small silver pin tucked inside my purse, the one I haven't worn in years, but can't seem to leave at home. It's a habit, carrying it, like carrying a piece of a life nobody here would believe. I wasn't always this quiet. There was a time when my voice mattered, when my hands held lives in their grip, when my choices shaped things this town could never imagine. But that was long ago, before the oaths I swore silenced me, before the burden of secrets molded me into a woman who stands in the background, who lets the world assume she's empty. I don't correct them. What would be the point? They'd laugh like they always do and call me Eleanor the spinster with her fantasies. So I let them think what they want. I let them mock me. I let them forget me. But tonight something's different. Maybe it's the way the air feels heavier, like a storm gathering on the horizon. Maybe it's the way Patricia's laughter grates against my skin, or the way Mrs. Hargrove's words, dead-end life, keep echoing in my head. I feel a flicker of something I thought I'd buried, not anger, but a quiet, stubborn refusal to let this be my story's end. I shift my weight, my heels steady, against the hardwood floor, and I decide to stay a little longer, just to see what happens. The reception moves forward, and I fade further into the shadows. The cake is cut, the speeches are given, and I'm still here unnoticed. My brother-in-law Tom is telling a story about his latest golf game, and the table around him roars with laughter. I catch snippets of conversation, Clara's honeymoon plans, Patricia's new vacation home, Mrs. Hargrove's son, who just made partner at some big law firm. They're all so proud, so loud, so sure of their place in the world. I wonder what it's like to live like that, to wear your worth openly, to never have to hide who you are. I'm not bitter, not really. I made my choices and I'd make them again. But standing here watching them celebrate a life I'll never have, I feel the ache of it, the loneliness, the years of silence, the truths I can't share. I think about the pin in my purse, its edges worn smooth from years of my fingers tracing it in secret. I think about the nights I spent staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd ever feel seen again. And I think about the people who did see me, the ones who trusted me with their lives, who called me by a name this room would never understand. The music slows and I take a step toward the door. I'm almost ready to go, to slip out and leave this behind. But then I hear it, a voice low and commanding, cutting through the chatter like a blade. "Excuse me," it says, and the room quiets. I freeze my hand on the doorknob, my heart suddenly loud in my chest. I know that voice. I haven't heard it in years, but it's carved into me as familiar as my own breath. I turn slowly and see him standing at the front of the hall, his uniform crisp, his posture unyielding. General William H. Carver, United States Army retired. A man who once saluted me in a place far from here? A man who knows my name, not Eleanor Voss, but something else entirely. He's scanning the crowd, his eyes sharp and deliberate. And I know with a certainty that makes my knees weak that he's looking for me. The room seems to hold its breath, the hum of conversation fading as heads turn toward him. Patricia lowers her glass, her smile faltering. Mrs. Hargrove pauses mid-sentence, her eyes narrowing. Clara glances around, confused as if she's missed something important. And me, I'm still here, half hidden by a pillar, my hand still on the doorknob. I could still leave. I could slip out before he finds me, before this moment pulls me back into a life I've spent years trying to bury. But I don't move. I can't. Because beneath the pain and the silence, there's a part of me that's been waiting for this. A part that's tired of hiding. General Carver steps forward, his boots clicking against the floor, and the crowd parts for him. His gaze sweeps the room steady and unrelenting, and I feel it like a weight, even though I'm tucked away in the shadows. My pulse is racing now, a rhythm I can't ignore. I think of the pin in my purse, the vows I took, the nights I spent in places where the stakes were life and death. I think of the woman I used to be, the one who walked through fire and came out whole. And I wonder for the first time in years if she's still there waiting to be called back. He stops, his head tilting slightly as if he's caught sight of something or someone. His voice when he speaks again is softer, but no less commanding. I'm looking for someone, he says, someone who belongs here more than any of us. The words settle over me like a mantle, and I feel them stir something deep inside. My fingers tighten around the doorknob, but I don't turn it. Not yet, because I know this moment is about to change everything. The room is still the weight of General Carver's words, hanging in the air like smoke after a fire. I'm rooted to the spot, my hand no longer on the doorknob, but pressed against the cool wall behind me, anchoring me to this moment. His eyes are still searching, and I know I should step forward, reveal myself, but something holds me back. A reflex born of years spent guarding a truth, too heavy for this room to hold. My mind slips unbidden to another time, another place where I wasn't Eleanor Voss, the forgotten aunt in the gray dress, but someone else entirely. Someone who walked through shadows not to hide, but to protect. It was 2003, and I was 25, my boots sinking into the dust of a desert I can't name even now. The air was thick with heat, the kind that clings to your skin, and makes every breath a labor. I was part of a unit, so classified, we didn't have a name, only a number, Unit 47. My code name was Sparrow, a nod to my size, my quiet, and the way I could slip through places unseen. But there was nothing small about what we did. We were the ones sent in when the stakes were too high for regular operatives, when failure wasn't an option. That night, under a sky so black it swallowed the stars, I led a team of 6 through a maze of tunnels to extract a high-value asset. The mission was simple on paper: get in, get out, don't get caught. But the reality was a labyrinth of gunfire and betrayal, where every step could be your last. I remember the weight of the rifle in my hands, the way my heart stayed steady, even as explosions shook the earth. I remember the voice in my earpiece, General Carver, then a colonel, his tone calm but urgent. "Sparrow, you're our only shot. Get them out." And I did. I got them out, every single one of my team, plus the asset, a scientist whose knowledge could shift the balance of a war nobody talked about. I carried a wounded man on my back for 3 miles, my lungs burning my legs, screaming, but I didn't stop. Not until we reached the extraction point, not until I saw the chopper blades slicing through the dawn. Carver was there when we landed. His face grim, but his eyes bright with something I'd never seen before: respect. He saluted me, not as a formality, but as a debt. "You saved us all, Sparrow," he said. And I believed him because in that moment I felt it. The weight of lives saved the power of a choice made under pressure. That was the first time I understood what I was capable of. It wasn't the last. Over the next decade, I ran missions across continents, from frozen tundras to sweltering jungles, each one carving a piece of me away and replacing it with something harder, sharper. I learned to speak 4 languages, to defuse a bomb in under a minute, to read a room of enemies and know who'd break first. I learned to live with the weight of secrets, the kind that keep you awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if you'd made the right call. And I learned to keep my mouth shut, because the oaths I swore weren't just words, they were chains binding me to silence, even when I came home. Home. That's a funny word. When I left the service in 2015, I came back to this town, to the house my parents left me, to the family who'd long since stopped asking where I'd been. They didn't know about Unit 47 or Sparrow or the medals locked in a safe. I never open. They didn't know about the scars on my shoulder, the ones I hide under long sleeves, or the nightmares that wake me at 3 a.m. My hands still reaching for a rifle that's no longer there. They didn't ask, and I didn't tell. How could I? How do you explain a life like that to people who measure success in promotions and picket fences? So I let them assume I'd been away drifting, wasting my years on nothing. I let them call me spinster burden nobody. Because the truth was too big, too dangerous, and I was bound by my oaths to keep it buried. Back in the fellowship hall, the present snaps into focus. General Carver is still standing at the front, his presence commanding the room. The crowd is murmuring now, curiosity rippling through them like a current. Patricia is leaning forward, her brow furrowed as if she's trying to solve a puzzle. Mrs. Hargrove is whispering to her friend, her eyes darting between the general and the guests searching for whoever he's come for. Clara is clutching her groom's arm, her expression caught between confusion and awe. And I'm still here in the shadows, my heart pounding as memories flood me. Memories of a life I've spent years trying to forget. Sometimes I forget I was ever anything but forgotten. There are days when I look in the mirror and see only Eleanor Voss, the woman who buys her groceries alone, who waters her garden in silence, who sits through family gatherings like this one and says nothing. But then there are moments like this, when the past reaches out and grabs me, reminding me of who I was, who I still am somewhere deep inside. I think of the pin in my purse, the one with the Unit 47 insignia, the one I carried through every mission and still carry now like a talisman. I think of the nights I spent in safe houses planning operations that saved lives, and the mornings I spent writing letters to families of operatives who didn't make it home. I think of the woman who earned the name Sparrow, and I wonder if she's still in me, waiting for a reason to fly again. General Carver takes another step, his eyes narrowing as they sweep the room. I feel the pull of his gaze like a thread tugging at my core. I could still hide. I could slip out the side door, disappear into the night, and let this moment pass. But something stops me, a memory sharp and vivid of a night in 2010 when I stood in a war room with Carver and a dozen others, planning a mission that would save an entire unit trapped behind enemy lines. I was the one who found the way and the one who charted the path through a valley nobody else dared to cross. When it was over, when the unit was safe, Carver shook my hand and said, "Sparrow, you're the reason they're alive." I'd felt it then, the pride, the purpose, the knowledge that I'd done something that mattered. And I feel it now stirring in my chest, refusing to let me run. The crowd is silent now, every eye on the general. He raises a hand, silencing the murmurs, and his voice carries across the hall, steady and sure. "I'm here for someone who changed the course of history," he says. "Someone whose name you may not know, but whose actions you'll never forget." My breath catches, and I feel the weight of every choice I've ever made pressing down on me. I think of the desert, the tunnels, the chopper blades cutting through the dawn. I think of the lives I saved, the ones I couldn't, and the silence I've kept all these years. I think of the pin, the oaths, the scars, and I think of the woman I was the one who didn't need anyone's approval to know her worth. General Carver's eyes find mine, and I see it, the recognition, the respect, the unspoken promise that he hasn't forgotten. He nods just once, and I know there's no turning back. I step out from behind the pillar, my heels clicking softly against the floor, and the room turns to look at me. Patricia's glass slips in her hand, clinking against the table. Mrs. Hargrove's mouth opens, then closes. Clara's eyes widen, her hand tightening on her groom's arm. And I stand there, not Sparrow, not yet, but Eleanor Voss, feeling the weight of a past I can't escape, and a future I'm not sure I'm ready to face. I don't speak. I don't need to. The general's gaze holds me steady, and I know this moment is only the beginning. My heart is racing, but my hands are calm, my spine straight the way it always was when the mission was clear. I've spent years hiding, but now for the first time in a long time I feel seen. And I'm not sure if I'm ready for what comes next, but I know I can't hide anymore. The fellowship hall is a sea of eyes, all fixed on me, but I don't flinch, not yet. General Carver's gaze holds me like an anchor, steady and unyielding. But the weight of the room's attention is a different kind of pressure, one I haven't felt in years. My sister Patricia's glass is still tilted in her hand, a bead of champagne trembling at the rim. Mrs. Hargrove's whisper has died mid-sentence, her face frozen in a mask of disbelief. Clara, my niece, is staring, her mouth slightly open, as if she's seeing me for the first time. I stand there, my heels grounded against the hardwood, my hands still at my sides, and I let them look. I let them wonder. Because for so long I've been the woman they dismissed, the one they called nobody. And now, for reasons I can't yet grasp, that's about to change. I don't know what General Carver is going to say next, but I know it's tied to the life I left behind, the one I've spent years burying under silence and small-town routine. My mind flickers back to the present, to the life I've built here, not out of choice, but necessity. The life of Eleanor Voss, the woman who lives alone in a modest house on Maple Street, who tends her roses with quiet precision, who sits through family gatherings like this one and absorbs the barbs without a word. They call me Spinster Burden, the one who never amounted to much. They say it with smiles, with pity, with that smug certainty that they've figured me out. And I let them, because what else could I do? The truth isn't something you can casually drop into a conversation over coffee. It's not something you can explain to people who measure a life by weddings and promotions. I think about the last family dinner just a few months ago at Patricia's sprawling house on the hill. The table was set with her best china, the kind she only brings out for guests she wants to impress. I was there, of course, because I always show up, even when I know what's coming. Patricia was in her element, regaling everyone with stories of her latest charity gala. Her voice bright with self-importance. Tom, my brother-in-law, chimed in with tales of his business deals, each one bigger than the last. Clara, newly engaged then, was showing off her ring, the diamond catching the candlelight, as she talked about her wedding plans. And me, I sat at the far end of the table, my plate barely touched, listening as they spoke over me, around me, through me. At one point, Patricia turned to me, her smile tight. "Eleanor, you're so quiet tonight," she said as if it was news. "Don't you ever have anything to share?" The table went still, everyone waiting for me to fill the silence with something, anything that would justify my place among them. I could feel their eyes, their expectations, their judgment. I wanted to tell them about the nights I spent in a war room, mapping out strategies that saved lives. I wanted to tell them about the time I disarmed a bomb with 30 seconds to spare my hands steady as the world held its breath. I wanted to tell them about the scientist I carried through a desert, his blood soaking my uniform, his life depending on my refusal to give up. But I couldn't. The oaths I swore still bind me, and even if they didn't, they wouldn't believe me. So I smiled a small, practiced thing and said, "Not much to tell, I guess." They laughed a soft, pitying sound and moved on. That's how it's been for years. I endure it, their assumptions, their dismissals, their casual cruelty. I endure it because I know who I am, even if they don't. I endure it because the alternative, breaking my silence, exposing my past, would mean unraveling everything I've worked to protect. But it's not easy. There are moments when the loneliness is so sharp it feels like a blade. Moments when I wonder if I've disappeared entirely, even to myself. Sometimes I stand in my garden, pruning the roses, and I catch myself whispering the names of my old Team Hawk Viper ghost, as if saying them out loud could bring them back. They're gone now, most of them lost to missions or time, but they were the ones who saw me, who knew me as Sparrow, who trusted me with their lives. Here in this town, I'm just Eleanor, the woman who never married, who never made anything of herself. Tonight, though, the air feels different. General Carver's presence has shifted. Something cracked open a door I thought I'd locked forever. I'm still standing in the shadows, but I can feel the room tilting toward me, the weight of their attention pulling me into the light. I don't want it, not really, but I can't escape it either. My fingers brush the strap of my purse, where the silver pin lies hidden, its Unit 47. Insignia, a secret only I understand. I think about the woman I was, the one who ran toward danger instead of away from it, and I wonder if she's still there, buried under years of silence and restraint. The general clears his throat, and the room snaps back to attention. "I'm here to honor someone," he says, his voice carrying the weight of authority I remember so well. Someone whose courage and sacrifice changed lives, mine included. The crowd murmurs, heads turning as they try to guess who he means. Patricia's eyes dart around her lips, parting as if she's about to speak, but she doesn't. Mrs. Hargrove leans forward, her expression a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Clara is still staring at me, her brow furrowed as if she's trying to reconcile. The aunt she's always ignored with the woman the general is describing. I take a breath, steadying myself. I don't know what's coming, but I know it's tied to the past. I've kept hidden the missions, the sacrifices, the moments when I was more than just Eleanor Voss. I think about the last time I saw General Carver in 2015, just before I left the service. We were in a nondescript office in Virginia, the kind of place that doesn't exist on any map. He was a brigadier general by then, and I was tired. Tired of the secrets, the losses, the endless weight of it all. He'd asked me to stay, to take a desk job, to keep serving in a way that wouldn't cost me so much. But I couldn't. I'd given everything I had, and I needed to come home, even if home didn't know what to do with me. Sparrow, he'd said, using my code name one last time, "You're one of the best we've ever had. Don't let the world forget that." I'd nodded, but I didn't believe him. Not then. I thought the world had already forgotten, and I was ready to let it. I came back to this town, to this life, and I tried to disappear. I tried to be the woman they wanted me to be, quiet, unassuming, invisible. But standing here now with the general's eyes on me, and the room holding its breath, I realize I never really disappeared. Not entirely. The general takes another step, his boots clicking against the floor, and the crowd parts for him. His gaze is locked on me now, and I feel it like a current, pulling me back to the woman I used to be. I think of the desert, the tunnels, the weight of a wounded man on my back. I think of the war room, the valley, the lives I saved. And I think of the silence I've kept, not out of shame, but out of duty. A duty that's starting to feel like a cage. I need her to come forward. General Carver says, his voice softer now, but no less commanding. She knows who she is. The room turns to me, and I feel their eyes like a physical weight. Patricia's glass finally slips, clinking against the table. Mrs. Hargrove's hand flies to her mouth. Clara's groom whispers something, but Clara doesn't respond. She's still staring, her eyes wide with something that looks like fear, or maybe awe. And me, I'm still standing, my heart pounding, but my hands steady the way they always were when the mission was clear. I don't move. Not yet. Because even now, after all these years, I'm not sure I'm ready to step into the light. But the general's gaze holds me, and I know I can't stay hidden forever. Not anymore. The fellowship hall feels smaller now. The walls closing in as every pair of eyes pins me in place. General Carver's words, "She knows who she is," echo in my chest, stirring something I've kept locked away for so long it feels like a stranger. My hand is still brushing the strap of my purse where the silver pin lies hidden, a relic of a life I thought I'd left behind. I'm Eleanor Voss, the woman they call spinster, the one they pity. But in this moment, with the general's gaze holding me steady, I feel the ghost of Sparrow stirring her wings, brushing against the edges of my silence. I almost didn't come tonight. I stood in my bedroom an hour before the reception, staring at my reflection in the mirror, the gray dress hanging loose on my frame, my hair pulled back in a simple knot. I looked ordinary, unremarkable, the kind of woman you pass in the grocery store without a second glance. I thought about staying home, tending my roses, letting the night pass without me. It would have been easier, safer. But Clara had called me herself, her voice bright and distracted, saying, "Aunt Eleanor, you have to come, it's my wedding." She didn't mean it, not really. I could hear it in the way her words rushed together like an afterthought. But I came anyway, because that's what I do. I show up even when I know I'll be sidelined, even when I know it'll hurt. Now standing here, I wish I'd listened to that quiet voice, telling me to stay away. The room is too warm, the air thick with perfume and expectation, and I feel exposed like a nerve laid bare. General Carver is still at the front, his uniform a stark contrast to the soft pastels and glitter of the wedding guests. His presence is a disruption, a crack in the polished surface of this celebration, and I can see it in the way the crowd shifts, uneasy, curious waiting. Patricia is gripping her glass so tightly I'm surprised it hasn't shattered. Mrs. Hargrove is whispering again, her eyes darting between me and the general, her earlier smugness replaced by something sharper like fear. Clara is frozen, her hands clasped in her lap, her groom leaning in to murmur something she doesn't seem to hear. I take a small step back, my heel catching slightly on the edge of the rug. I could still leave. The side door is just behind me, a few steps away, and I could slip out into the night, let this moment dissolve like a bad dream. But the general's eyes are on me, and they hold a weight I can't ignore. A weight that reminds me of briefing rooms and battlefields of moments when running wasn't an option. I think of the pin in my purse, its Unit 47, insignia, a silent testament to who I was. I think of the oaths I swore, the ones that still bind me, even now in this church hall, surrounded by people who think they know me. The reception was supposed to be a simple affair, a celebration of Clara's new life, but it's become something else entirely. The tables are draped in white linen, adorned with roses and flickering candles. But the elegance feels fragile now, like a stage set about to collapse. The band has stopped playing, the dance floor empty, and the waitstaff hover uncertainly at the edges of the room, sensing the shift in the air. I notice small things, the way the fairy lights cast jagged shadows on the walls, the way the champagne in Patricia's glass trembles, the way Mrs. Hargrove's fingers clutch her necklace as if it could protect her from whatever's coming. I didn't expect this, not tonight, not ever. When I left the service 10 years ago, I thought I'd left Sparrow behind for good. I came back to this town, to this life, because I was tired of the secrets, the danger, the constant weight of knowing too much. I thought I could be Eleanor Voss, the quiet woman, who keeps to herself, who lets the world assume she's nothing. But standing here with the General's words ringing in my ears, I realize I never really left Sparrow behind. She's been here all along, waiting in the quiet spaces, in the way I carry myself, in the pin I can't let go of. General Carver clears his throat, and the room snaps to attention. This isn't the setting I'd have chosen, he says, his voice low but carrying. But sometimes the truth demands a stage, no matter how unexpected. He pauses, his eyes still on me, and I feel a chill run through me, not from fear, but from the certainty that this moment is inevitable. I'm here to honor someone who served this country in ways most of you will never understand, he continues. Someone who risked everything, who saved lives, who carried burdens you can't imagine. The crowd is silent, but I can feel their questions, their disbelief. Patricia's eyes narrow, and I know what she's thinking, that this is a mistake, that the General must be looking for someone else, someone more important, someone who isn't her invisible sister. Mrs. Hargrove's lips are pressed into a thin line. Her earlier words deaden life, hanging between us like a challenge. Clara is watching me now, her expression a mix of confusion and something else, something that looks like guilt. I want to look away, to hide, but I don't. I hold my ground, because that's what Sparrow would do, and because I'm starting to remember what it feels like to be her. I think back to the moment I decided to come tonight. I was standing in my garden, the late afternoon sun, warm on my face, my hands buried in the soil as I planted new roses. I'd found the invitation on my kitchen counter, tucked under a pile of bills, its gold lettering mocking me. I almost threw it out, but something stopped me. A stubborn need to prove I could still face them, still endure their pity and their scorn. I chose the gray dress because it was plain, unassuming, the kind of thing nobody would notice. I pinned my hair back, slipped the silver pin into my purse, and drove to the church, telling myself it would be fine. I'd sit in the back, smile when expected, and leave before anyone could say anything too cutting. But now, with the General here, with the room watching, I realize there's no slipping away unnoticed, not anymore. General Carver takes a step toward me, and the crowd parts, their murmurs rising like a tide. I feel the weight of their stares, but I keep my eyes on him, on the man who once called me Sparrow, who trusted me with missions that changed the world. His uniform is immaculate, the medals on his chest gleaming under the fairy lights. And I know what they mean, years of service, sacrifice, loss. I know because I have my own medals locked away in a safe, never worn, never shown. I know because I was there in the shadows doing the work nobody else could. I need her to come forward, he says again. His voice softer now, almost gentle, but with an edge that brooks no argument. She's here, and it's time she was seen. The words hit me like a physical force, and I feel my breath catch. My hand tightens around the strap of my purse, the pin inside it, a silent reminder of who I am, who I've always been. I think of the desert, the tunnels, the weight of a wounded man on my back. I think of the war room, the valley, the lives I saved. And I think of the years I've spent hiding, letting the world assume I'm nothing because it was easier than fighting a battle I could never win. The room is waiting, the silence so thick it feels like it could choke me. Patricia's face is pale, her eyes darting between me and the general, as if she's trying to rewrite the story in her head. Mrs. Hargrove is still clutching her necklace, her earlier confidence gone. Clara is standing now, her hands twisting together, her eyes locked on me with an intensity that makes my chest ache. And me, I'm still here, my heart pounding, but my spine straight, the way it always was when the mission was clear. I take a breath and then another, and I step forward. Not because I want to, but because I have to. Because Sparrow never ran from a fight, and because Eleanor Voss is tired of hiding. My heels click against the floor, each step louder than the last, and the crowd turns to watch me, their whispers fading into silence. I don't look at them. I look at General Carver, at the man who knows my truth, and I let his gaze guide me forward into the light I've spent years avoiding. The fellowship hall is a frozen tableau, every face turned toward me as I step into the light. My heels echo in the silence, each click a heartbeat, steady and deliberate, carrying me closer to General Carver. His eyes never leave mine, and in them I see the man who stood beside me in briefing rooms, who trusted my judgment when the stakes were life and death. The crowd is a blur, Patricia's pale shock, Mrs. Hargrove's clenched jaw, Clara's wide-eyed stare, but I don't look at them. I can't. Not yet. My world narrows to the general, to the weight of this moment, to the truth I've kept buried for a decade now rising. Like a tide I can't hold back. I stop a few feet from him, my hands steady at my sides, though my pulse is a drumbeat in my ears. The air is thick, charged, like the moment before a storm breaks. I feel the silver pin in my purse, its presence a silent anchor, tethering me to the woman I was Sparrow Unit 47, the one who walked through fire and came out whole. I don't know what General Carver is about to say, but I know it's tied to that life, to the missions and sacrifices I thought I'd left behind. And I know with a clarity that makes my chest ache that there's no hiding anymore. The general steps forward, closing the distance between us, and the crowd leans in their whispers, swallowed by the weight of his presence. His uniform is crisp, the medals on his chest catching the fairy lights, each one a story of valor I understand too well. He's older now, his hair grayer, his face lined with years I haven't witnessed, but his posture is unchanged, unyielding, commanding the kind of man who holds a room without trying. I remember him in 2003, a colonel then, his voice steady in my earpiece, as I led my team through those tunnels. I remember him in 2015, shaking my hand in that Virginia office, his eyes heavy with the knowledge of what I was giving up. And now here he is, in this church hall looking at me, like I'm still Sparrow, like I never stopped being her. "Ma'am," he says, his voice low, but cutting through the silence like a blade. "We've been looking for you." For the words land like a stone in still water ripples spreading through the room. I hear a gasp, Patricia, maybe, or Mrs. Hargrove, but I don't turn to look. My eyes are locked on the general, on the respect in his gaze, the kind I haven't seen in years. I open my mouth to speak, to say something, anything, but the words catch in my throat. What do you say when the past you've buried walks into the present and calls your name? I feel the weight of every eye in the room, their confusion, their disbelief, their sudden need to rewrite the story they've told themselves about Eleanor Voss. General Carver raises a hand, silencing the murmurs before they can grow. I know this is unexpected, he says, his tone measured but firm. But there are debts that must be acknowledged, no matter how much time has passed. He pauses, his eyes still on me, and I feel a tremor run through me. Not fear, but something deeper. A recognition of the truth I've carried alone for so long. This woman, he continues, has served this country in ways most of you will never know. She's saved lives, mine included, and she's done it without ever asking for recognition. The room shifts, a collective intake of breath. I can feel their eyes boring into me, trying to reconcile the general's words with the woman they've dismissed for years. I want to shrink back, to fade into the shadows, but I don't. I stand there, my spine straight, my hands still, the way I stood in briefing rooms when the mission was clear. I think of the pin, the oaths, the scars I hide under long sleeves. I think of the desert, the tunnels, the weight of a wounded man on my back. And I think of the silence I've kept, not out of shame, but out of duty, a duty that's starting to feel like a chain I'm ready to break. Patricia's voice breaks the silence, sharp and unsteady. "Eleanor," she says. Her tone a mix of disbelief and something that sounds like fear. Are you saying Eleanor?" She's standing now, her glass forgotten on the table, her eyes darting between me and the general. I don't look at her. I can't. Not because I'm angry, but because this moment isn't about her or Mrs. Hargrove, or any of the people who've called me nothing. It's about the truth and the man standing in front of me who's here to speak it. General Carver doesn't acknowledge her. His focus is on me. And it's like we're back in that war room, the world falling away, until it's just us and the mission. "You don't have to hide anymore," he says, softer now, almost a whisper, but the words carry a weight that makes my knees tremble. It's time. I shake my head, just slightly, a reflex born of years of keeping secrets. I start my voice barely audible, but I don't know how to finish. I'm not what Not Sparrow. Not the woman he's describing, not the hero he's making me out to be. I've spent so long being Eleanor Voss, the quiet aunt, the nobody, that the idea of stepping back into that other life feels like stepping off a cliff. But the general doesn't let me retreat. He steps closer, his voice steady, reverent. "You are," he says, "and you always have been." He turns to the crowd, his gaze sweeping over them, commanding their attention. "This woman," he says, "is one of the bravest operatives I've ever known. She served with Unit 47, a classified division that handled missions most people can't even imagine. She saved my entire unit, 32 men and women, because she refused to leave anyone behind." The room erupts in murmurs, a wave of shock rolling through the crowd. I hear Clara's voice, soft and trembling. Aunt Eleanor and I feel Mrs. Hargrove's stare, her earlier words, dead-end life, now a bitter irony. Patricia is silent, her hands gripping the edge of the table, her face a mask of confusion and something that looks like betrayal. But I don't look at them. I look at the general, at the man who's pulling my past into the present, and I feel the weight of it all, the missions, the losses, the choices that shaped me into the woman I am. I think back to that night in 2003, the one he's talking about, though he hasn't named it yet. The tunnels, the gunfire, the scientist bleeding out in my arms. I remember the moment I decided to go back to carry him, when my team urged me to leave him behind. I remember the chopper blades, the dawn breaking over the desert, the relief in Carver's voice when he saw us. I remember the way he looked at me, then the way he's looking at me now, and I realize he's not just here to honor me. He's here to set me free. I start again, my voice stronger this time. But he shakes his head, a small smile, tugging at the corner of his mouth. "You don't have to explain," he says. "Not to me, not to anyone." He turns back to the crowd, his voice rising, filling the room. "This woman is a hero, and it's time you all knew it." The murmurs grow louder, a mix of awe and disbelief, but I barely hear them. My eyes are on the general, on the respect in his gaze, the kind I haven't seen since I left the service. I feel the pin in my purse, the weight of my past, and I know this moment is a turning point. I can't go back to being just Eleanor Voss, the woman they pity. But I'm not sure I'm ready to be Sparrow again either. All I know is that the truth is out, and there's no hiding anymore. General Carver steps back, gesturing for me to come closer, and I take a step, then another, my heels steady against the floor. The crowd is watching, waiting, and I feel their eyes like a physical weight, but I don't falter. I think of the woman I was the one who saved lives, who carried burdens nobody else could. And I think of the woman I am the one who's endured years of silence and scorn, who's still standing despite it all. I stop in front of the general, and he nods a silent acknowledgement of everything we've been through. "It's an honor to see you again," he says loud enough for the room to hear. Sparrow. The word hits me like a bullet, and I feel the room spin. Sparrow, my code name, my truth. Spoken aloud for the first time in years. I don't know if I'm ready for what comes next, but I know I can't turn back. Not now, not ever. The word sparrow hangs in the air, a single syllable that cracks open the silence I've carried for a decade. It's not just a name, it's a key, unlocking a part of me I thought I'd buried forever. General Carver's voice, steady and reverent, has stripped away the mask of Eleanor Voss, and now the room is staring at me, not as the quiet aunt, the spinster, the nobody, but as someone they can't comprehend. My heart is a hammer in my chest, but my hands are steady, my spine straight the way they always were, when the world demanded more than I thought I could give. I stand in front of the general, the fairy lights casting soft shadows across his uniform, and I feel the weight of every mission, every sacrifice, every secret I've kept pressing down on me like a storm. The crowd is a frozen sea of faces, their murmurs swallowed by the shock of the general's words. Patricia is gripping the edge of the table, her knuckles white, her eyes wide, with something that looks like betrayal, as if I've stolen something from her by existing in a way she never imagined. Mrs. Hargrove's hand is still at her throat. Her earlier smugness shattered, her lips parted in a silent question she doesn't dare ask. Clara is on her feet now, her groom's hand on her arm. Her face a mix of awe and confusion, as if she's seeing me for the first time and realizing she never knew me at all. I don't look at them, not yet. My eyes are on General Carver, on the man who's just spoken. My code name aloud, who's pulling my past into this church hall and laying it bare for all to see. Sparrow, he says again. Softer this time, but the word carries the same weight, like a salute. Or as you know, her Eleanor Voss. He turns to the crowd, his gaze sweeping over them, commanding their attention. This woman is not just your sister, your aunt, your neighbor. She is one of the most extraordinary operatives I've ever had the privilege to serve with. She was a member of Unit 47, a classified division that operated in the shadows, handling missions that determined the course of history. And she was one of the best. The room erupts in whispers, a wave of disbelief and curiosity rolling through the crowd. I hear my name, Eleanor, repeated in hushed tones, as if they're testing it, trying to fit it into the story the general is telling. I want to shrink back, to fade into the shadows, but I don't. I stand there, my heels grounded, my hands still at my sides, and I let them look. I let them see. Because for years, I've been the woman they dismissed, the one they mocked, and now, for the first time, they're forced to reckon with the truth. General Carver steps closer, his voice dropping, but still carrying every word deliberate. In 2003, he says my unit, 32 men and women, was trapped behind enemy lines in a conflict you'll never read about in history books. We were out of options, out of time, and facing certain death. But Sparrow Eleanor found a way. She led a team through a network of tunnels under fire, carrying a wounded asset on her back for miles when everyone else said it was impossible. She didn't just save that scientist whose work later turned the tide of the war. She saved every single one of us, including me. The crowd is silent now, the weight of his words settling over them like a shroud. I feel their eyes, their shock, their sudden need to rewrite the narrative they've built around me. I think back to that night, the one he's describing, though the details are still classified. Locked behind oaths I'll never break. The tunnels were a labyrinth of dust and darkness, the air thick with the stench of fear and gunpowder. My team was behind me, their trust a weight heavier than the scientist bleeding out in my arms. I remember the moment I decided to keep going, to ignore the pain in my legs, the fire in my lungs, the voices in my earpiece telling me to abort. I remember the chopper blades slicing through the dawn, the relief in Carver's voice when he saw us, the way he saluted me, not as a formality, but as a debt. I blink, and I'm back in the fellowship hall, the memory fading, but the feeling lingering sharp and raw. General Carver is still speaking, his voice a lifeline pulling me through the storm of this moment. Eleanor Voss didn't just serve, he says. She sacrificed. She carried burdens most of us couldn't imagine. And she did it without ever asking for recognition. She came home to this town, to this life. And she kept her silence, not because she had to, but because she chose to. Because that's who she is. I shake my head just slightly, a reflex born of years of downplaying my past. It wasn't. I start my voice low, but the general raises a hand, stopping me. It was, he says, his tone, firm but kind. And it's time you let us honor you for it. He reaches into his pocket and pulls out a small velvet box, the kind that holds something sacred. My breath catches because I know what it is before he opens it. I've seen boxes like that before, locked away in my safe, never touched, never shown. He lifts the lid, and the crowd leans forward, a collective gasp rippling through the room. Inside is a medal, its ribbon a deep blue, its surface gleaming under the fairy lights. The Distinguished Service Cross, one of the highest honors this country can bestow. This General Carver says, holding it up for all to see, was awarded to Eleanor Voss in 2004. In a ceremony she couldn't attend because she was already on another mission. I'm here to present it to her now with the gratitude of a nation and of a man who owes her his life. The room is a blur now, the faces fading into a haze of light and shadow. I feel the weight of the medal even from a distance, and I want to protest to tell him I don't need it, that I never did this for medals or recognition. But I don't speak. I can't. Because the look in his eyes, the respect, the gratitude, the unwavering belief in who I am, silences me. I think of the pin in my purse, the Unit 47, insignia I've carried like a secret for years. I think of the nights I spent in safe houses, the mornings I spent writing letters to families of operatives who didn't make it home. I think of the woman who earned that medal, and I realize she's still here, standing in this hall, even if I've tried to forget her. General Carver steps forward, the medal in his hands, and I feel the room hold its breath. Eleanor Marie Voss, he says, his voice ringing with a reverence that makes my chest ache. On behalf of the United States Army and with the deepest gratitude, I present you with the Distinguished Service Cross for your extraordinary heroism and sacrifice. He pins the medal to my dress, his hands steady, and I feel the weight of it, not just the medal, but the years, the lives, the choices it represents. The crowd is silent, but I can feel their shock, their awe, their sudden need to understand the woman they've ignored for so long. Patricia's face is pale, her eyes glistening with something that might be tears or maybe shame. Mrs. Hargrove is staring at the floor, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Clara is crying now, her hands covering her mouth, her groom's arm around her shoulders. I look at the general, and I see the man who trusted me, who believed in me, who's giving me this moment. Not because I asked for it, but because he knows I deserve it. Thank you, I whisper, my voice barely audible, but he hears me. He nods a small smile, breaking through his stoic demeanor, and I know he understands what this costs me, what it means. The crowd begins to stir, a few people clapping, then more until the room is filled with applause. It's not loud, not triumphant, but quiet, almost reverent, as if they're afraid to break the spell of this moment. I don't look at them. I look at the medal, at the general, at the truth that's finally been spoken. And I feel something shift inside me, not pride, not triumph, but a quiet acceptance of who I am. Sparrow Eleanor both, and neither a woman who's carried more than anyone in this room could ever know. I think of that night in the desert, the scientist's weight on my back, the dawn breaking over the horizon. I think of the lives I saved, the ones I couldn't, and the silence I've kept all these years. And I think of the woman standing here now with a medal pinned to her dress, who's finally been seen, not for what she's done, but for who she is. The applause fades into a hush, the sound settling like dust after a storm. The weight of the Distinguished Service Cross, pinned to my dress, is both foreign and familiar, a tangible reminder of a life I've kept hidden for so long. I stand in the center of the fellowship hall, General Carver, a step behind me, his presence a steady anchor as the room grapples with the truth he's just revealed. My eyes are fixed on the medal, its blue ribbon stark against the gray fabric of my dress. But I feel the crowd's gaze, their shock and awe, pressing against me like a tide. For years, I've been Eleanor Voss, the woman they overlooked, the one they mocked. And now, in this moment, I'm something else entirely. Sparrow, the hero they never knew. The fairy lights cast a soft glow across the hall, but the elegance of Clara's wedding reception feels distant, like a stage set for a play that's taken an unexpected turn. The tables are still adorned with roses and candles, but the guests are no longer focused on the celebration. They're watching me, their faces a mix of disbelief, curiosity, and something that looks like shame. Patricia is still standing, her hands trembling as she clutches the back of her chair, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Mrs. Hargrove is slumped in her seat, her earlier confidence gone, her gaze fixed on the table as if she can't bear to meet my eyes. Clara is crying openly now, her hands pressed to her face, her groom murmuring something I can't hear. I don't move, I don't speak. I let the moment hold me. Let the weight of the medal, the general's words, and the crowd's silence speak for me. I've spent years swallowing my truth, letting their assumptions and barbs slide off me like rain. But now, with the Distinguished Service Cross gleaming on my chest, there's no hiding, no pretending. The woman I was Sparrow. Unit 47. The one who saved lives in the shadows is standing in the light, and I'm not sure if I'm ready for it, but I know I can't turn back. General Carver steps forward, his hand resting briefly on my shoulder, a gesture so small it might go unnoticed, but to me, it's a lifeline, a reminder of the trust we built in places far from here. Eleanor, he says. His voice low, meant for me alone. You've carried this long enough. Let them see you now. He steps back, gesturing to the crowd, and I realize he's giving me the floor, the chance to speak, to claim this moment. But I don't know what to say. Words feel inadequate, too small for the weight of what's just happened. Before I can find my voice, Patricia moves. She steps around the table, her heels unsteady on the hardwood, and approaches me. Her face a mask of conflicting emotions. Shock, guilt, maybe even anger. Eleanor, she says, her voice cracking, why didn't you tell us? The question hangs between us, sharp and raw, and I see the hurt in her eyes, as if my silence was a betrayal, not a necessity. I want to tell her about the oaths I swore, the secrets I was bound, to keep the fear that they'd never believe me. But I don't. I just look at her, my sister, the woman who's spent years dismissing me, and I let my silence answer. The crowd is watching, their murmurs quiet, but persistent, like a current running beneath the surface. I hear my name again, Eleanor Sparrow, whispered in tones of wonder and disbelief. Mrs. Hargrove stands now, her movements jerky, as if she's been pushed into action against her will. She approaches me, her eyes darting to the medal, then back to my face, and I see the struggle there, the need to reconcile her earlier words, dead-end life, with the woman standing before her. Eleanor, she says, her voice tight. I didn't know. I'm sorry. The apology is stiff-forced, but it's there, and I feel a flicker of something, not satisfaction, but acknowledgement. I nod just once and say nothing. My silence has always been my strength, and now it speaks louder than any words could. Clara is next. Her face streaked with tears as she steps forward, her white gown trailing behind her. Aunt Eleanor, she says, her voice breaking. I never. She stops choking on her words, and I see the guilt in her eyes, the realization that she spent years ignoring me, assuming I was nothing. I want to tell her it's okay, that I never expected her to understand, but before I can speak, she throws her arms around me, her sobs muffled against my shoulder. I freeze for a moment, unaccustomed to this kind of touch, this kind of need, but then I wrap my arms around her, holding her the way I held my team in moments of crisis, steady and sure. The crowd begins to move, a slow ripple of motion, as people stand, some approaching others, simply watching with a new kind of respect. A man I recognize as Clara's father-in-law, a local businessman, steps forward and offers his hand. "Ms. Voss," he says, his voice gruff. "Thank you for your service." I shake his hand, my grip firm, and I see the sincerity in his eyes, the kind I haven't seen in this town since I came back. Others follow, a quiet procession of neighbors, cousins, strangers, each one offering a nod, a handshake, a murmured word of gratitude. It's not loud, not dramatic, but it's real, and it settles over me, like a balm soothing wounds I didn't know were still raw. General Carver watches, his expression unreadable, but I see the pride in his eyes, the same pride I saw in 2003, when I stumbled out of those tunnels bloody and exhausted but alive. He steps forward again, this time holding a small folded flag, the kind given to honor those who've served. "This is for you," he says, placing it in my hands. "A symbol of your service and a reminder that you're never alone." The flag is heavy, its folds crisp, and I clutch it to my chest, feeling the weight of every mission, every life, every choice I've made. The room shifts again, the tension breaking as the band starts to play, a soft, tentative melody that feels like an offering. People begin to move back to their seats, but the air is different now, charged with a quiet reverence. I stand there, the medal on my dress, the flag in my hands, and I feel something I haven't felt in years seen. Not as Eleanor Voss, the woman they pitied, but as Sparrow, the woman who saved lives, who carried burdens nobody else could. Patricia approaches again, this time alone. Her eyes red but steady. "Eleanor," she says, her voice softer now. "I don't know what to say. I was wrong about everything." She pauses, searching my face, and I see the sister I used to know, the one who braided my hair when we were girls, before life pulled us apart. "Can we talk later?" I nod, not trusting my voice, and she steps back, giving me space I didn't know I needed. Clara is still beside me, her hand on my arm, and I look at her, at the niece I've loved quietly from a distance. "I'm proud of you," I say. My voice low and her eyes fill with tears again. She nods, unable to speak, and I know this moment has changed something between us, something that might grow if we let it. The general salutes me, a crisp, formal gesture that feels like a closing, a sealing of this moment. I return the salute, my hand, steady, my heart full, and I know this is the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. The crowd watches, and I feel their respect, their regret, their need to understand. But I don't owe them explanations. I never did. I step back, the flag still in my hands, the medal a quiet weight against my chest. The band plays on, and the reception begins to resume, but it's different now, softer, more subdued. I move toward the edge of the room, not to hide, but to breathe, to let this moment settle. I think of the desert, the tunnels, the dawn breaking over the horizon. I think of the lives I saved, the ones I couldn't, and the silence I've kept all these years. And I think of the woman standing here now, who's finally been seen, not for what she's done, but for who she is. The fellowship hall hums with a quiet energy. Now the reception resuming, but forever altered. The band plays a soft melody, and guests return to their tables, their voices subdued, their glances flickering toward me with a mix of awe and hesitation. The fairy lights still twinkle, the roses still bloom on the tables, but the air carries a new weight, a reverence that wasn't there before. I stand near the edge of the room, the distinguished service cross pinned to my dress, the folded flag cradled in my hands. and I feel the moment settling into me like a stone, finding its place in a riverbed. For the first time in years, I'm not hiding, not shrinking, not swallowing my truth to make others comfortable. I'm Eleanor Voss, I'm Sparrow, and I'm here fully seen. I slip the flag into my purse next to the silver pin that's been my silent companion for so long. The weight of both feels right, like pieces of a puzzle I've finally stopped trying to force apart. General Carver is speaking to Clara and her groom, now his presence still commanding but softer, as if he's giving them a moment to process what's happened. Patricia is at her table, her head bowed, her hands folded in her lap, and I know she's wrestling with the sister she thought she knew and the one who stood before her tonight. Mrs. Hargrove is gone, slipped out during the applause, perhaps unable to face the weight of her own words. I don't feel triumph at her absence, only a quiet acknowledgement that some people will never understand. And that's okay, I don't need them to. Clara approaches me again, her eyes red but bright, her white gown glowing under the lights. Aunt Eleanor, she says, her voice steadier. Now can we talk soon? I want to know you, really know you. There's a sincerity in her words, a hunger for connection that makes my chest ache. I nod a small smile, breaking through my restraint. I'd like that, I say, and I mean it. For years I've kept my distance, not because I didn't care, but because I didn't know how to bridge the gap between who I was and who they thought I was. Now with the truth laid bare, maybe that bridge can be built. I take a breath and step toward the side door, needing air, needing space to let this moment settle. The crowd parts for me, their eyes following, but it's not oppressive now, it's respectful, almost gentle. I push open the door and step into the night. The cool June air a balm against my skin. The sky is clear, stars scattered like diamonds, and I stand there, the medal still pinned to my dress, the flag in my purse, and I feel something I haven't felt in years, peace. Not the loud, triumphant kind, but the quiet, steady kind that comes from knowing you've carried your burdens well, even when no one else saw. I think about the woman I was, Sparrow, running through tunnels, diffusing bombs, saving lives in the shadows. I think about the woman I became, Eleanor, pruning roses, enduring silence, letting the world assume she was nothing. And I think about the woman I am now, standing under this starry sky, holding both truths in her hands. I don't need to choose between them anymore. They're both me, woven together by years of sacrifice and strength, and that's enough. I walk to my car, my heels clicking against the pavement, and I pause, looking back at the church. The lights spill through the windows, and I can hear the faint hum of music, the murmur of voices. I know they're talking about me rewriting their stories, grappling with the truth they didn't see coming. But I don't need their approval, their apologies, their awe. I never did. What I needed, what I found tonight, was the chance to stand in my truth, to let it breathe, to let it be seen. I slide into the driver's seat, the metal catching the moonlight as I close the door. I don't take it off, not yet. It feels like a part of me now, a reminder that my past isn't something to hide, but something to carry with grace. I start the engine and drive home, the quiet streets of my small town unfolding before me. When I pull into my driveway, the roses in my garden are silver in the moonlight, their petals soft and still. I step out, leaving my purse in the car, the flag and pin. Safe inside, and I walk to the garden, my fingers brushing the blooms. I think about the viewers watching this, the ones who've stayed with me through this story, who've felt the weight of my silence and the power of my truth. And I want to speak to you now, directly, because you've been here listening, understanding. You don't need to explain your past to anyone. I say my voice soft but clear, as if you're standing here with me, in this garden. It lives in your spine, in the way you carry yourself, in the choices you make when no one's watching. Your truth is yours, and it's enough. I kneel my hands in the soil, and I feel the earth beneath me steady, and real. I think of the desert, the tunnels, the dawn breaking over the horizon. I think of the lives I saved, the ones I couldn't, and the silence I kept all these years. And I think of the woman who stood in that fellowship hall tonight, who let the world see her not for glory, but for grace. I stand brushing the dirt from my hands and I walk to my front door. The metal is still pinned to my dress, a quiet weight against my heart. I don't take it off, not yet. Instead, I step inside, leaving the door open for a moment, letting the night air follow me in. I move to the small table in my living room where a single photograph sits, a faded image of my old team Unit 47, taken in a rare moment of rest. I touch the frame, my fingers lingering on the faces of Hawk, Viper, Ghost, and the others who knew me as Sparrow. I smile, a small private thing, and I know they'd be proud of me tonight. I close the door, the click soft but final, and I stand in the quiet of my home, the metal gleaming in the dim light. I don't need to be Sparrow or Eleanor anymore, I'm both, and that's enough. I walk to my bedroom, my steps light my heart full, and I know that tomorrow I'll tend my roses, I'll talk to Clara, I'll live my life. But it'll be different now, not because the world has changed, but because I have. I've stepped into my truth, and I'm not stepping back. I pause at the window, looking out at the stars, and I feel it again, that quiet, steady peace. It's not loud, not triumphant, but it's mine, and it's enough. I turn away, ready to rest, ready to carry on, knowing that my past lives in my spine and my future is in my hands.